My very first memory outside of my family and the home was of the church. My whole life was centered around the church. I even went to Christian school for all 13 years of my early education. I remember being 6 or 7 years old and waking up early because we would go to a prayer meeting before school started on Fridays. I would kneel down to pray like everyone else did, and then I would promptly fall asleep. My very first memory of deep hurt was of the church. My parents started a church in our living room, and we quickly outgrew it. I hated it, though. I would tell my parents, "You were called, not me." I hated the glass house we lived in, the expectations and pressure to be perfect. I also hated the lies. My dad grew up in a dysfunctional home full of abuse, and as much as he tried to give us a life different than the one he grew up with, he didn't quite succeed in every way. He brought control, physical abuse, and overall dysfunction into our home, and I silently lived with it. At 14 years old, I decided I would never date or marry anyone who had anything to do with full-time church ministry. This was a serious and solid commitment I made to myself. I wanted to run as far away from the pain of silence, abuse, and pressure as I could. When I started driving, I gained a little bit of freedom, so on Sunday afternoons, I would take long drives out of town. If I had 3 hours in between morning and evening services, I would drive an hour and a half out of town, stop, then turn around and drive the hour and a half back. Years later, I met James, and it was love at first sight. The only problem? He was a pastor's son. I took a chance on him, though. And when he proposed, before he answered with my yes, I said, "As long as you promise to never work for a church." He said, "Absolutely." We spit and shook on it. Everything was good. He was as I had dreamed. I had an amazing husband, beautiful kids, and a dog that I affectionately call my forever baby. My life was protected from the church and from God, and I liked it that way. James ended up breaking his promise, and years after we married, he left a successful job and went to work full-time for a local church. My world didn't fall apart as I thought it would. I was still happy, but now I felt like my happiness was threatened. I was so happy, I was miserable. But God began working on my heart over the years. He never let me get too far. He never let me wander off. He kept bringing me back to Him. He was healing my wounds. He was showing me that He could be trusted. He was showing me that I was loved by Him. One Sunday, our pastor said something that rocked my heart. I can't remember exactly what he was preaching about, but I do remember the part that mattered. The part God used to bring me fully back to Him. He said our response to God should be, the answer is yes. Now what's the question? I felt those words hit me in the deepest parts of my rebellion, anger, selfishness, and fear. It took me all of 2 seconds to say the words in my heart. I knew there would be a cost. I knew it meant leaving my comfort zone. I knew it meant relinquishing control. I also knew it wouldn't be easy, but there was an excitement about the future, an anticipation to see what God would do with my yes. That day, I stopped running. I have not regretted a moment of this God-directed, inspired, and protected journey. This journey has taken me across the country, preaching the message of Jesus. I've realized a God dream of starting Nichole Chavez Ministries that reaches women around the world with the message that we don't have to be victims of this sinful world, but rather volunteers to change it. I've been honored to have Journey to Purpose published and being studied in small groups across the country. For years, I was silent about my pain, my hurt, and my faith. But God healed and has redeemed all of it for His purpose. Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose for them." God took the entirety of my life, the hurt and the pain, the past and the present, and He has worked it together for good. If it is possible for me, it is possible for everyone. I believe that women around the world have a purpose, and that purpose is to change the world for Jesus. I know we don't have to be victims of what is happening all around us, but instead we are volunteers to change it. I believe it is time for God's daughters to stand up, silenced no more by the sin and pain of this world, but instead bravely joining the fight, fully aware that the battle being fought requires all of us to make a stand, using our purpose, our calling, our actions, and voice to bring Jesus into our world again. My purpose, my calling, my life's mission is to build a community of women around the world who want to change the world for Jesus. Women who no longer see themselves as victims of a sinful world, but as volunteers to change it.